Hey, this is Mike and Suzie, and
Hello, everyone.
we're here. We want to discuss an event that Suzie was actually witness to, and this happened back in 2000. But I'm going to talk to proceeding before this. This one is in my book, Falling Sky. This event, and this is my book, Falling Sky. And what I'm talking about here, what I'm going to talk about, is the 7 white spheres. Right here in this chapter, it says the 7 white spheres, okay, and the image you're seeing back on the screen is basically this image here, okay, and I'm going to clarify what this actually was and what happened. Okay, of course, I think most of you know that I was pretty much in Sonoma County for many years. I was born in Marin County and moved to Sonoma County, and most of my events happened in Sonoma County. Actually, most of it happened there. But anyway, one of the last events that I had in Sonoma County before we decided to depart was Terror Drive. That's also in that book. Okay, that's when they took me off the side of the road in my car and out into the field. These beings in a hovercraft. But I'm not going to get into that event so much, but I'm going to say that when I was in the craft, they told me these beings, there was 2 grays and the humanoid again in this craft, in a big, large white room in this little tiny hovercraft. So they had a great way of handling space. In other words, this little hovercraft wasn't much bigger than a van on the outside appearances, but when you're inside, it was just giant. Okay, it was like a big craft. So anyway, while I was in that event, on the side of the road, and they took me out. They had me in the craft. They were discussing future events that are going to happen in this world, okay? And many of them had to do with a lot of destruction, a lot of annihilation, wars, the rumors of wars, and everything else talking about in the scriptures, okay? And I was wondering what I had to do with any of this, why they wanted me to hear this stuff. They said because it was my duty for some reason. They felt it was my duty to share this to the world, what's been going on with me, okay? I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't really talk about it to anybody, did I, Suzie?
No, not at all. Honestly, I had no idea what was going on.
Other than briefly in contact, I spoke to you, and you knew other things that happened, okay? Like the cigar craft.
I knew other things, but I think a lot of it is I dismissed them because I didn't want to believe him. Because, I mean, I thought he was just,
cracking up.
Well, yeah, cracking up, going a bit bonkers,
Okay, now, during that incident, I'll reiterate, they told me to share this information about that this world it needs to understand that this stuff is real, that's been written about in the scriptures, that it's not quite translated quite the right way, but it's real, that there are going to be wars and rumors of war, and basically this human race is going to develop a huge war machine, which they have been for a very, very long time, from World War I all the way up to nukes and everything else, okay, where we are now. Okay, so, and they're at odds with every other country, and they wanted me to share what they've talked to me about, and I didn't want to do it. I just wanted out of that craft. I wanted to go to work. I knew how to be at work that morning, and anyway, so that's when
You were afraid you were going to be late.
I was afraid I was going to be late, and I wasn't. Actually, this time I wasn't late. I was leaving very early, especially after the Triangle Craft incident, when there was missing time, and I did show up late, okay? But this time I didn't want to be late, and I was leaving earlier to work, so this didn't happen again. That's when they took me off the side of the freeway. Anyway, now on to my point. The seven white spheres. Okay, we moved from Sonoma County to Orange County down in Southern California back in 2000. Okay, thereabouts, 90s. Okay, late 90s. Okay, when did we actually?
1996.
1996, yeah, in late 90s. Okay, but this event that I'm talking about actually occurred in 2000. I thought I had basically gotten away from these beings by doing so. I tried to run, okay, I tried to hide, but I found that there really was nowhere for me to run and to hide. because at first I thought it worked. We were developing a new life down there, and I wasn't being contacted by these beings. And I thought, well, Sonoma County was the biggest problem. That's why it was happening up there. And anyway, to get to the point, it was, as Suzie says, we moved down there in '96, and it was the summer of 2000, some June.
Yes.
It was in June, and we were living about a mile and a half south of Disneyland. And so we're pretty close to Disneyland. You wouldn't expect an event like this to happen so close to Disneyland, oddly enough. But back then I used to smoke cigarettes. Okay, I don't anymore. But I was in my yard, and I was relaxing. It was a nice, beautiful night out there. And all of a sudden I see, probably, I'm guessing it's about 9:30, 10 o'clock. Suzie was in the house, and she was doing dishes. And I'm looked to my left up in the sky, and I see these, they look like giant balls, huge, glowing, bright white balls like you see in the screen behind me here. They were probably the size of, I want to say, in my book I say 10 times the size of basketballs, but they were monsters. They were very big orbs, and they were all in a row like that, and they just came soaring right up, heading straight for me, floating right up above my head. I screamed for Suzie to come out. Okay.
Yes. So I came out, and I looked up in the sky, and there were 7 white. They looked like moons or orbs or spheres, or that they were circular, and one by one they disappeared into the sky by turning into a star. And it kept,
each one of them turned into stars.
Well, each one did it, at their own time, turned into stars, and they turned into, of all things, the Big Dipper.
The Ursa Major system.
Yes, which I thought was really interesting. One would think that living so close to Disneyland, they would have stuff like that. They didn't have this one. Not at all.
We weren't the only ones that witnessed this.
Exactly.
We had a neighbor who lived across from us, and she heard us out in the yard, and she came over, and she says,
everybody started coming out.
Everybody started coming out.
Yeah.
Okay, we lived in a complex similar to what we are now, and everybody started coming out, and a lot of people witnessed this happening too. Okay, and we just explained how they just shot up in the sky and turned into this constellation, the Ursa Major system, basically the Big Dipper's the Ursa Major system. And this is how they were telling me where they're from. Okay, so anyway, this happens, and I'm like, oh, SHI, they found me. I didn't want to be found. I thought I got away from it. And from '96 to 2000, we're talking, well, 4 years, I got away with this. I was free and clear. So I went in the house after we witnessed this, and I was really distraught. And Suzie she asks,
like, what's wrong?
Yeah.
Like, what's wrong? That was pretty neat what we saw out there. And Michael said to me that he had a job to do, and I'm like, well, what do you mean? And
I said I was in trouble.
Yes.
Remember that?
Yes,
I said I was in trouble. I said I'm in big trouble.
You did.
And I was worried.
Yeah. Well, you explained it to me, that you had a job to do and you weren't doing it.
Terra Drive, she didn't even know about, just so you know. I went home after work in Terra Drive, and because I was so tired of all that was happening, you wanted to erase it like it never happened. Okay?
A lot of Michael's experiences I didn't know about until he started writing them down.
Yeah, and that's what happened. Okay, she says, "What are you in trouble for?" I'm going to speak for her right now, because this is how the conversation went. I said, "I'm in trouble because they expected me to do something." And she says, "What do they expect you to do?" She says, "Who are they?" And I said,
I was confused at this point.
I said, the aliens. And she says, "What do they want you to do?" She says, "This stuff is real." And she's going like, "This stuff is real?" I said, "Yeah, I've been trying to tell you it's real." Okay. And so after she witnessed it, she said, "What do they want you to do?" I said, "They told me I'm supposed to be talking about this and sharing it with the world." And I never did what I was supposed to do. I ran away. I departed, and they found me down here, so they could find me wherever I am. They have obviously that's what that device was up in my sinus cavity, was a tracking device and they also have one in the back of my neck that also showed up evident in X-rays, and you know, so they're tracking me, all right. And I said they found me, and they expected me to share everything that they've kind of told me, and a lot of it was basically scriptural. Okay, a lot of it really was. That's what really got me into, besides my mom, was that a lot of stuff they were talking about wasn't scriptures. Okay, and so she says, well, how are you going to do this? She says, you want them off your back. And I said, yeah, I do. I don't want to keep being hounded by them.
I suggested to him that he does what the ETs had asked him to do, and this brought about his first writings, explanations, at the end of 2000.
This is the book. This is the little book that I wrote back in 2000.
I remember making that.
This is the book I wrote back in 2000, okay? It's really so small, you can barely read it. You need a magnifying glass to read it, seriously.
Lots of nights at Kinko's.
Lots of nights at Kinko's
that.
making copies. So I sat there for, I don't know, 4 months just trying to get this book together about what they were telling me to do. And I tried to revise this book and put it out there just recently, but most of it's not in. Most of this book that was originally done isn't in it because it's really heavily religion. And so she said, she was, at that time,
it's 100% Bible-based.
Susie was working at the Huntington Beach Pier selling tie-dye T-shirts. That's what she did. She used to make tie-dye T-shirts, and she'd go down to the Pier Plaza on the weekends. Professional T-shirt color, okay? And she would sell them on weekends down there. And she said, well, why don't you make this book, she says, and just start handing them out down at the pier.
I'll start putting them in the bags when people buy stuff.
And I said, how can we do it cheap enough for that? So that's what we did. We went to Kinko's. We printed up these little books, and I did, I don't know how many, probably about 1,000, honestly. And I just started passing them out. I went down with her on the weekend, and I started passing them out with her down there. And oddly enough, in this little book, I'm going to mention something very weird. One day we were down there, and I'd been passing with a lot of people. A lot of people were coming back to me and saying, that thing is really interesting, that little book that you have there. And they said, where this guy, I tried to explain where it's all coming from and everything else. And one of the remember, this is back in 2000, okay? And that's when we were down at the pier, okay, selling her tie-dye T-shirts. It was probably near winter or somewhere thereabouts, and it was still nice weather down at the pier. But we used to work every weekend down at that pier selling these. And this one gentleman comes up, and he was in he bought a whole bag of shirts from her. Okay, he bought like 15 shirts from her, and I handed him one of these books. Okay, and he says what is that? And I explained it to him. I told him exactly what it was about aliens and what my experiences were with these aliens and what they expected me to do. I said, and read it. I said, it's really heavy in religion and scriptures. And he's got a cane. He said he just had a accident, if I believe, and motorcycle accident, from what I remember, if I remember correctly. And he says, let me tell you who I am. He says, I'm a writer. And I go, oh. He says, I'm David Childress. He says, he says, I'm working on. He says, it's weird. He says that you just gave me this book. He says, we're working on a show right now. He says, as a matter of fact, I just relocated here to Southern California. He says, and he says, we are working on a show. He says, touching this subject. And the show, which I didn't realize he was working on until I actually saw it air.
Yeah, at the time, yes.
Was Ancient Aliens. Okay, and he says, can I ask you a question? He says, can I use what you have in this book? He says, on our show? I go, yeah, please do. I said, I don't have no problem. I have no problem with that whatsoever. So he says, do me a favor, sign the back of it. He says, sign the back of it. He says, you may see it on the show. So lo and behold, that's when, well, very shortly after Ancient Aliens was released, the first season, and I started discussing all these subjects in here, from the esophagus, the tombs, the Egyptians, a lot of stuff that's in this book, okay? And a lot of it was scriptural, and I'm seeing a lot of my stuff on Ancient Aliens that was discussed.
Ancient Aliens is a great show.
It's a great show. I love the show, and the great people on it. David was a really, really cool dude when I met him. He was a really awesome dude. Really
In
nice.
great taste. He bought a bunch of shirts.
He bought a bunch of shirts. Really nice guy. Okay, so that being said, I found it interesting that later after seeing that on the show. But now my point being, I'm going to go back to the 7 white spheres, which caused and prompted this book to be written, and parts of it to even be shared on Ancient Aliens, because they're very heavily themed in the Egyptians and the scriptures, and they talk about the scriptures like I do, okay, and a lot of it. That's exactly what this book was about, breaking down the scriptures to what it really was, like I'm doing here, okay. Okay, now I'm going to get into what these 7 white orbs or spheres are. Okay, now scripturally, I'm going to read you something here, and it's out of the English Standard Version of the Bible. I like that one the best because it's the most it's the easiest one to really understand, but they all pretty much say the same thing. I've studied...
There's so many translations and variations and all that, you know.
Yes. So what I want to read you is this part here, and this is from Revelations, and it's chapter 3, and this is Revelations are... It's messages to John, okay, and from one like a son of man, according to what Scripture says. The Son of Man, of course, in the Scriptures is Jesus. And anyway, here in chapter 3, I'm going to start with verse 1. I don't have it up on another screen because I've got that up and behind me. I'm reading from my screen right now. And chapter 3, verse 1, it says, "And the angel of the church of Sardis write the words of him who has the 7 spirits of God and the 7 stars." I'm going to stop there. 7 orbs that turn into 7 stars, or the Ursa Major system, okay? The Big Dipper, okay? 7 stars, okay? "I know your works. You have the reputation of being alive, but you are dead. Wake up and strengthen what remains and is about to die, for I have not found your works complete in the sight of my God." And that just hit me, okay? When I was telling Susie what I was expected to do, this passage hit me just like a ton of bricks. It's like I wasn't doing what they expected me to do, and that's when they came and jogged my memory. It's like, hey, we're here, and up in the sky, one after the other, the 7 lights, okay, the 7 lampstands, okay. This is all over in Scriptures, the 7, and that's what they were, 7 bright white orbs. And white means purity. When you go to Scriptures, white means purity. So that's exactly what they were, purity. And they expected me to share this information, and I didn't do it. I shirked my duties according to them, and that's when I wrote this little book, Explanations. And it was probably actually a very interesting event. I'm not going to say the most. I've had a lot of very interesting events, but that one just really struck me home because I was scared, okay? And it was weird that it's written about in that way in Revelations, that you failed your duty. In other words, you didn't do what you're supposed to do, and here we are. If you want us to respect you and leave, I'm adding this to myself now, if you want us to respect you and be with you and help you, you need to do what we expect. So that's what I did. That's what started it all. People wonder why I share so much on Facebook and YouTube and everywhere else. This is why. I was terrified. I didn't. You asked, what are they going to do to me? Did you not?
Exactly. I asked, well, I said, you've been hiding out all this time. Now, what are they going to do to you if you don't do this?
I said I didn't know. I really didn't know what they would do, honestly. I didn't want to keep being taken in crafts. That scared me at the time. I was really frightened by it. I'm not anymore. I think the biggest fear is the fear of the unknown, and I didn't know what was going on, and now I have a little more insight to what's going on. But I wanted to share the basics behind these 7 white spheres and where it stems from, because there's a little bit of history to this. And oddly enough, the History Channel and Ancient Aliens is part of that history too, because they took that book and they ran with it too. They've done so much out of this little book here with it. And they must have read it all with magnifying glass, because you could see how small this text is. But he did. He went through that thing apparently and read every bit of it. And you know, it's just interesting to see a lot of the stuff I've talked about in this book on that show. And we actually have all this, most of several seasons of the show. And you know what? I watch it and I see so much of my stuff in that show. So it's being spread around, it's being spread here, and that's what needs to happen. Anybody who has these experiences really needs to start speaking out about them, because people have tried, the governments, worlds have tried to hide these experiences, and it's really essential that people start speaking out, because I know a lot of people aren't religious. I'm not religious. I'm not religious at all, actually. I read scriptures for enlightenment.
There are 4,200 different religions and counting.
And it's just an awesome history book. So I think probably everybody should read the scriptures at least once or twice just for the history of it all.
Oh, the whole Bible, definitely. Absolutely.
But I wanted to share this about the 7 white spheres, and you all have a good night.
Good night, everyone.